Hey everyone, before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you like my content, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and then join the Militiaman and Crew Patreon community by clicking the link in the caption. Good evening everybody, Militiaman and Crew here again. It's going to be a wonderful Friday night. I think everybody should be excited because all the things that happened. We had a lot of events these last few weeks. We know that there's a closure for the Baghdad International Fair, which was finished up on the 19th, where they had hundreds and hundreds of companies showing up. We also had, at the same time, after the launch, al-Sudani, which is the Prime Minister of Iraq, went into Davos, and they had meetings for the last few days, and today is the last day. But the bottom line was al-Sudani looks like he's arrived home as of yesterday. But interestingly enough, that we're going to find out, and I'll go through a little bit of that there was a lot of people there, a lot of people that were focused in on Iraq. And again, I'm going to come back to what we talked about and what the government talked about. And they did some things that I talked about as far as the confidence level, confidence in restoring confidence, is nothing new. There's no copycat about it. It's all about the fact is that Iraq has talked about restoring confidence 8 years ago. Al-Nusri, an advisor for the Iraqi people and their government and financial institutions, has been around for a long period of time. And he talks about specific things about restoring confidence to the Iraqi banking sector 8 years ago. Okay, that didn't happen. But interestingly enough, that concept, that focus on Iraqi's banking sector being restoring confidence, it didn't happen during ISIS. So fast forward that until al-Sudani gets into office, which was in October of 2022, they started building from there again. And then when they come into almost a year later, just shy of a year later, at the UN Assembly meeting in September of 2023, they had spoken about al-Sudani's achievements, and he talks about achievements. He talks about those in 2024, even more coming, but he says that he's going to do these things, and I think he was put in place on purpose to be able to get these things done. And what we saw was the dedication that he's put in. Taif Sami was put in. The team that they put together in the Ministerial Council of Economics, they put all that in, right? And they've been working on steroids to do this process. And so if you, like I said, if you go back in time and you come through Patreon and you go back and look, you can follow along and see that what this whole process is far more advanced than just clicking a checkbox and it's done. But what they did say was that they were going to restore confidence. And one of those things, again, this is probably the third time I'm going to say it, I'll probably not say it again, is that al-Sudani, Iraq, Central Bank of Iraq, the whole country is going to bring confidence to the international financial system. And they also stated specifically that to the largest banks in the world. You've heard me say it, they talked about it, JP Morgan Chase. We talked about it the other day. Who's there involved? JP Morgan and all the bigger banks. And so aside from that, we're going to move forward to the point where who is one of the top leading entities in the world? And that is the International Monetary Fund. Why are they there? Well, of course, they have involvement in exchange rates regimens. Okay, the Bank of International Settlements has exchange rate regimens. Yesterday was a Thursday. They had bilateral exchange rate meetings. So whether that has anything to do with it or not, but they do talk about fluctuations and changes that are important. So whenever these changes happen, and a lot of times they do these things on Thursdays, at least they communicate to the people of the world and to central banks, etc., people that are in the know need to know, they do those dates. But in this particular case, at the Davos Economic Forum in Switzerland, it says that the financial cooperation relations between Iraq and the International Monetary Fund were discussed with a framework of supporting the development path of Iraq, or in Iraq. The development. We all talk about development project, development road project, or the sustainable project, sustainable development, or sustainable programs. So sustainable and development are key components of those large entities around the world, whether it's the UN, whether it's the World Bank, International Monetary Fund. What are they talking about? Sustainable development. Okay. They go on to say, Al-Sudani points out that his government has plans in the field of economic and financial reforms as a gateway and a basis for all the reforms that the government plans in all vital sectors. So he's planning on taking care of a massive amount of things in all vital sectors. Okay, we get the picture. He goes on to say with Georgieva, which is the IMF. She's been there for quite some time now, but basically it says Iraq's joining a non-financing program to support economic reforms, as meetings with the fund will begin next month to implement this program. Non-financing. Well, Iraq has enough money, has enough equity, sweat, and blood, and oil, and natural resources, and tourism, and customs, and taxes, and tariffs, and all these things that they can probably do things with the IMF in that SDR basket of money that they're already involved with to be able to probably make a deal. Exactly what those numbers are, they don't tell you that, but it's pretty fascinating that we're at that stage where the IMF's involved, and Article 8 compliance could be something on the table, has been on the table, is under the table until we see it. We'll see how that turns out. But anyway, it goes on, says that the steps taken by the government in the field of the financial and banking system and improving the business and investment environment is what they're trying to express to everybody. That's what they're doing. It's an understanding of Iraq's specificity and the challenges it faces. So look, after decades between all the involvement between Iraq and the IMF, there is specificity of many things that are likely to be known by the IMF. The exchange rate regimens are likely to be known for sure. It looks like Iraq's moving forward with all the reforms which the government has laid out, and that the IMF is aware and supports it all. So look, in my view, it's almost like a foregone conclusion with all these things, having been at the Davos conference, having had those meetings with Al-Sudani and in the Erbil region about the oil and gas. They've had the WTO meetings in Erbil. They had all those. All these collective things throughout all my videos, if you get through them all, or at least read in Patreon and our Discord chat room, you're going to find that a lot of these things are happening. But one of the things that is for sure is that they say that they don't need any financing. Well, if you try to finance these projects to build the development road project, to do all the infrastructure projects, all those different things at 13.10 exchange rate today, they're going to need financing. Okay, they haven't even paid their salaries. Why? Because they're going to do something different. They're not going to do it the way they did it in the past. So let's just see how it goes. But at 0006 or 0007, as far as exchange rate's concerned, when they drop the 3 zeros off of that, it makes a big difference. Do the numbers, do a little math, get a calculator, and see what the difference is when you have 0.0007 to the dollar and you drop those 3 zeros and see what the calculation is. You can see there's a big difference in it, okay? That's where this whole thing gets back to. And let's say, you guys study it. It's phenomenal. It's wonderful stuff. So let's think about this, though. The foreign minister of Iraq told us earlier this last week, Fahd Hussein, right? He comes in and he says they want to restore confidence. So they've had 8 years of waiting, have they not? He came out and talked about, al-Nusri actually did, forgive me, but al-Nusri came out 8 years ago and talked about restoring confidence to the banking sector, and then they're talking about it again. And they do that with intensity because not only did they talk about it in September, at the UN Assembly meeting, they talk about it again as a label for the Davos conference, their forum, right? And what is it? Restoring confidence. And so there's no coincidence. You have 8 years. You have 8 years. Then within about a year, September, and a few months, they say it again. So the foreign minister Fawad Hussein reveals the conclusion of a new agreement between Baghdad and Erbil to resume the export of oil from the Kurdistan region. Okay, why is that? They do that because I think that they have to say that they have had to have evaluation based on a future exchange rate, a real effective exchange rate. And he's suggesting that they revealed the conclusion of a new agreement. So when did they do that? Well, they agreed to do that on the 15th. So that's a fascinating time frame to think about, the 15th of January. Futures contracts, they can go out 30 days, they can go out longer, but interestingly enough, they did that then. Then you have a strategy to enhance confidence for the banking sector by Samir al-Nasiri. That was 8 years ago that he talked about it. Did it again the other day, and it says the fifth item that he gave out was increase the capital of banks. We all know that they increased the capital of the banks. The correspondent banks, there was 40, then I think they increased them as high as almost to 72 banks, correspondent banks, specifically for doing what? Doing trade outside of the Central Bank of Iraq. The Central Bank of Iraq is going to be in that supervisory position, whereas central banks around the world will actually feed the correspondent banks with the currencies that they need for facilitating trade. And that's what we've already seen all that. It's already been done. So it goes on to say that the capital of the banks on the new date of February 15, 2024, which is the deadline specified for the increase. Okay, so effectively, so what they needed to do, because remember the taxation of the borders was to be in the dinar. They were supposed to cease literally the dollar as trade from the 1st of January. So some of these time frames are overlapping, and they're showing that they're doing things. And again, back from the MCOE time frame of November of 2022, they've done nothing but inroads to move forward to get this completed. So the bottom line is, when they're saying restoring confidence, they have a Baghdad meeting with hundreds or almost 1,000 different companies. They go to the Davos meetings, and they have nothing but a laundry list of meetings with some of the largest entities in the world, and we're going to get to that also. But here he goes on and says, goes back towards 8 years ago. They stated the governor of the central bank announced at the regular meetings of banking leaders 2 days ago that the central bank will adopt a special strategy to enhance confidence in the banking sector. That was in 2016. Okay, but they're going to do it again, and they've already said that. So the Council of Ministers, they suggest that they have an expansion in the number of banks that changed and became 72 banks. I said 40 to 72. So we're going to see how this turns out. But you can see the progression of all these different things are just on steroids. And we can think here, it says, quote, therefore the new strategy, this is today, within the last few days, therefore the new strategy to enhance confidence, okay? And we went back to 8 years. So again, the copycat stuff is like, it's silly. I would be embarrassed, right? As explained by the governor on what? January 11th, 2024 will depend on the following. And they go, the first thing is to improve the level of banking services. The second is the availability of banks' financial solvencies. The bank's control and direct supervision of focus and measuring the service of provided banks to customers. So they go through all those, but the bottom line was the fifth was the increase the capital of the banks on the new date of February 15th, 2024, which is the deadline specified for the increase. But you got to remember, the first of the year was when they were going to cease using the dollar. So what you should deduce from this, or I do at least, is that they're going to need to populate more banks with more money because of new trade that started on or around the beginning of the year. he goes on to say that about 5 days ago, Sudanese participates in the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Actually, it was on the 13th, so yes, it was about 5. It says this year's edition of Davos carries the slogan, "Restoring Confidence," and will focus in on the conflicts in the region and global concerns such as climate cooling, as far as where I live, because it's freezing where I'm at, and artificial intelligence. I was teasing there, you guys. So anyway, that's part of the process. As you can see, that there's more than there's more to it than just turning something on. It goes on and says that Iraq is taking serious steps to join the World Trade Organization. We all know that. They've been, Saudi Arabia's had numerous articles about it. Iraq's had numerous articles in the last few days. Saudi Arabia's got nothing but support. It's also stating here that Iraq has taken serious steps to join the World Trade Organization. This gentleman by the name of Al Mukbil said that the official agency of the news, it says Iraq is rich in natural and human resources and the ability of its people to be able to build and truly be competitive in the marketplace, right? So it's really fascinating that they're focusing in on this. It says Iraqi's economy keeps pace with aspirations of the region and the world in a transparent and open economy for cooperation and building strategic commercial partnerships with all countries of the world. So they're taking it serious. It's absolutely a fact. Iraq is talking about the WTO. They're talking about they're taking it serious. And so I would assume that with Saudi Arabia being one of the main focal points in the region, are giving utmost support, take it seriously. So it's actually fascinating because what did they say? They said they've completed those things. There's no political boundaries anymore. They've completed everything they need to do to get in. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. It says, after concluding his participation in Davos, al-Sudani returns to Baghdad yesterday. So this is a wow, okay? This is a laundry list of all the meetings that he had, okay? And the cool part here is, let's just go from, the first one they put out, it was the French president, Emmanuel Macron. They had meetings. The Swiss Confederation. We had the Secretary General of the United Nations, Secretary General of the North Atlantic Treaty from NATO, the U.S. National Security Advisor, President of the World Bank, Director General of the International Monetary Fund, okay, President of the European Commission, President of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Development Road Projects, Sustainable Development. All of these things come into mind. The Saudi Ministers of Trade and Investment. Why would they be there? Why would they be supporting the WTO? Are they going to be talking about doing trade at 1,310 dinar, where it's never left its borders effectively? You can't trade it in the United States. Does that make any sense to anybody? Okay. Meeting with the delegation of the International Finance Corporation, the IFC. Oh, by the way, the CEO of JP Morgan for their region, he's at the meetings in Davos. Why? Well, isn't JP Morgan one of the banks that they talk about was giving kudos to Iraq for bringing confidence, restoring confidence? Isn't that something they said? Isn't that what they talked about 8 years ago from Al Nusri? The guy's phenomenal. The guy knows what he's talking about, and he's talking about it again in the last few days. He says the business meetings were the 57 international companies specialized in oil, energy, and other economic fields. Let's not forget HKN, Energy, oil company. Where are they located at? Aren't they out of Texas somewhere? Weren't they related to somebody that was really powerful in the United States and was running for a very high office? I think you'll find that HKN has some respect in the world. And where are they? They're in the Kurdistan region. Why? Because there's oil there. What kind of oil? I think you better do your research. It's pretty good. Bloomberg was there. Wall Street Journal was there. They didn't mention Politico. I'm not sure why, but Politico was even there. We watched a video on it. So all of these different people, all those entities are all talking about Iraq And Iraq has had a program rate or a punishment rate of 1,310 trying to finance, which the IMF just said there's not going to be a need for financial obligations. If there is a non-financial circumstance, there's no interest involved. There's a tight bond between the two of Iraq. And not forget, Iraq does have SDRs in their quiver. But then here we have, it says that the Rafidane Bank announced the launch of work on a project to implement anti-money laundering and terrorist financing system. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because the bottom line is these new systems that they have are going to be key focused into exactly that, anti-money laundering and terrorist financing. That's going to have it's going to be a hindrance on it. So anyway, the goal of the project is to advance banking work and shift towards digital financial systems and digital transactions that are in line with the government's steps to accelerate economic and financial reforms in the country. So they're basically taking it very serious that they're moving forward, and the company that they talk about is Capital Based Solutions Limited, has a smart card. They got a strategic partnership, it looks like. And what is it about? It's talking about anti-money laundering and terrorist operations. It says, he goes on, the project, it provides an increase in the effectiveness of banks' compliance systems, maintains the conduct of the banking operations to be safer, and to apply at the highest level of compliance standards approved by the central banks. So who was involved? Well, UN's involved. What is it? UNODC. You guys can Google that. You'll find out who that is. It's all good. The next thing would be that al-Sudani is basically stating that we are creating a new economic vision for Iraq. Really? And he's also saying that the energy sector has not been invested properly, but they're indicating that they have set a new goal to reduce the dependence of the three budgets on oil. When they say that and reduce the dependence of the three budgets, that's a tripartite budget, on oil. What are they going to do? They're going to have the ISCUTA system working at all the borders. You have liquid natural gas. You have tourism. You've heard it 100 times. So all of those things, that's what he's talking about. It says we turn to important strategic projects, including the development path road. We're going to be doing commerce from the Port of Fa all the way into Europe. Okay, China, Port of Fa, Europe, destination. Pointing out that the energy sector was not invested properly, but that was just an add-on. But basically stating that they're going to diversify sources of income, as I just stated. It says Iraq has a basic partnership with the European Union. Didn't we mention that in those meetings? Was the European Union? Yes, we did. It says we're facing a new era that Iraq is economically strong, unified, and stable. That's what al-Sudani, that's his quote. So we all can see that all of these things are happening right under our noses. Again, this is key important, and there's support from the IMF. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani is basically talking about his optimism with the general economic situation and where he's headed in the next 20 years. This article says we're facing a new we are facing a new Iraq economically. I would look that one up. And it says, quote, we invest in natural resources. This could be materials. Translation, we invest in the natural materials we have, and we invest in the heritage and civilization that we carry, enabling us to move with confidence, again, towards a better future in a strong, united, independent, and stable Iraq. So they're focusing on 100% Iraq's going international. The next thing I could say here is that the media office is basically stating that the financial cooperation and relations between Iraq and the International Monetary Fund that were discussed within the framework of supporting the development path of Iraq, completely 100% underway as far as I can see. And it says that al-Sudani has referred to the government's plans in the field of economic and financial reform as a gateway and a basis for all reforms. That is huge, right? In what? They're going to have all reforms in the government's plans for all of Iraq's government and their vital sectors. it's just really kind of getting simple to see that the next article says the central bank plans to cancel the electronic platform. A lot of people are not really paying attention, or not necessarily paying attention, but it's kind of hard to understand. And I understand that, because sometimes you have to read things 3 or 4 times. Sometimes you have to bounce them around people to say, look, what is this saying? Because that's what we do with Patreon in our Discord chat room. That's why it's such a value-driven place. With the news people, Samson, Super Samson brings in new articles while I'm sleeping. We do this cycle. It's just like constant, which is fascinating. The crew are always there, involved in helping analyze and bouncing things off with one another. So check us out with that. But coming back to the Central Bank of Iraq gradually is to cancel this platform. Well, the platform is basically this. I'm going to use my view of it, is that the Central Bank of Iraq and other central banks will provide correspondent banks with currency. And I think the currency that we're talking about is many different currencies that have value, that are hard currencies, and they're stable currencies. That's the whole goal, that Iraq is going to be part of that crew, and they're going to get to a stable environment, right? Because the value is going to be there. But the bottom line is that the correspondent banks, those 40 to 72 that I talked about, they are going to be that foundation, and all other banks that subsequently don't get hooked up to what those correspondent banks and those other banks are doing at that time, they're going to go away. That's just the way it's going to be. So the central bank needed to tell everybody, this is like, look, if you're not hooked up, you're going to be gone. So they gave them a warning. So it says these requirements represent the minimum documents that must be provided for negotiations with correspondent banks, and they reflect the bank's financial and credit status and level of compliance and so forth. So they give some rules and regulations about that. I think you pay attention to it, because again, I think everybody, all the bankers that are not paying attention, that are doing nefarious and smuggling money and all that, writing's on the wall. They're going to be gone. And last, let's see here. Yeah, you got to realize too is that as far as some of these timelines are concerned, we talked about the Fahud Hussein before he left to go to Davos with al-Sudani and the central bank governor Moshan al-Alaq. All those meetings they talked about. Okay, one of the things that they needed to do is they needed to talk about the oil and gas law. And what it says here, it says that the Parliamentary Oil and Energy Committee, Ghalib Muhammad, stressed that the passage of the oil and gas law needs a consensus between the large blocs that have a majority within the House of Representatives. Fahud Hussein said before he even left, they had a deal. We're going to find out if they really did, but if he says it, I'm going to give that more credit than most other places, whether it be an expert or a deputy or any of that. Fahud Hussein, it's kind of like the horse's mouth. Okay, they go on to say that the passage of the oil and gas law is subject to movements of the larger political blocs. And in this particular article, what does it say? Which they have the majority within the House of Representatives. So at this stage of the game, it's at that level to where the majority has it in their hands. And at this stage of the game, with what we're talking about, resuming oil, they've lost billions, probably 10 to $15 billion of not producing oil. So obviously, the money, follow the money. HKN talked about that. Why were they in Baghdad and in Erbil negotiating with Baghdad and the Kurdistan region in April of 2023, and they're back again, and then they're at Davos, and they're I believe a private company. They're there for what? They're there for doing business, and them shutting down the oil movement is important, or they wouldn't be there. There's a video that's out that shows that HKN, Ross Perot Jr. Was in. So it shows that we're on the right track, everybody. It's fascinating. I think I love it. I think you guys do too, probably. And the last, let's see, Minister of Finance, Taif Sami, when she speaks, she's part of the MCOE. And what is she saying today? It's just the importance of joint cooperation between the executive and legislative institutions in order to support the government in implementing its reform program and consolidating the foundations of economic and financial advancement. That's a mouthful. But that's what she's talking about. She says by encouraging investments in construction, reconstruction, and the basic infrastructure related to the requirements of the citizens, enhancing the role of the private sector, developing the economy in the country, and providing employment opportunities for young people. I think that right there is just like hands down. She's the legal side of what we're talking about. This is good. This is really good. And this last snippet that I have from the president of the Republic of Iraq, Abdul Latif Jamal Rashid, he has stressed too that the Ministry of Interior is the security body that works on more than one level and fights on more than one front. It fights terrorism, combats the scourge of drugs, contributes to border control, and maintains internal security in addition to national duties related to the lives of the citizens. He goes on and adds that, quote, your national mission is to consolidate security and stability in the country because they are the main factor in achieving development, moving the economy, stimulating investment, consolidating our foreign relations with the countries of the world, indicating that this heroic work resonates positively with the people of Iraq, and this is widely observed through the media and through direct communications with the citizens and officials in the country. So basically, if you add that on top of Taif Sami's focus, you can see that Iraq is going international. You can think, if you take all of it into consideration that I've talked about, whether it be from JP Morgan Chase, whether it be Citibank, whether it be the confidence, restoring confidence, the European Bank, the United States Treasury, US Fed, everybody's been in these meetings. And some of the people that I mentioned weren't in that article and stated, but there was plenty of people there. And we can see that from other articles that show that they were, they just didn't mention them. So keep in mind, the whole thing is basically doing what? Restoring confidence, engaging the private sector. Iraq's going to be going international. And what we expect to see is that Iraq has an IMF Article 8 compliant currency that has a real effective exchange rate that supports the value of their currency and does restore that confidence. 8 years ago, they talked about banking confidence. This year, in September of last year, they talked about confidence, restoring confidence. They said restoring confidence 8 years ago. They said it in September of 2023, and they showcased restoring confidence. What's going to restore confidence? Is 1310 exchange rate, we're going to restore confidence? I think you know the answer to that question. In my belief, absolutely not. So hey, everybody, I hope you guys are excited going into a Friday, going into a weekend. Let's see what they show us. They have to be those wheels of engagement of the private sector are probably just chomping at the bit after the back end of the Baghdad Fair, Davos, all of that. So hey, if you like my content, please hit that like button, subscribe, and if you'd like to keep the content moving as we go along into the future, we have the Zelle, Venmo, and PayPal. So thank you. Once again, guys, don't forget to hit that like button if you like this content, subscribe to the channel, or join us at the Militia Man and Crew Patreon community for even more exclusive content. You can also donate to this channel by hitting the links in the banner to help keep this page up and running. Your generous support is greatly appreciated, as always. Much, much appreciated. Thank you so much, and have a great day.